Hey team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MSP. It's just typically unfortunate in terms of timing. As soon as I released my first video for the daily hits and losses, Andrew Perpetua released his loss stats for the last 24 hours. So I missed it by about just a few minutes. So I'm going to go through that as just a really quick addendum to my last video, and also talk about this strike a little bit more on the building in Belgorod. We'll start there. So moment the roof partially collapsed reportedly on a group of rescuers in Belgorod. So no reports saying that actually that rescuers were there at the scene. So I don't know whether that's at the time of the explosion or the whole building collapsing. I think it's probably, I don't know. Well, A, were there rescuers there? Is that true? And B, at what timing was that? But it could well be. I mean, it looks like the building collapsed when there was an explosion. So it could have been that something had already happened there, and then there was an explosion because there are rescuers there. So that's worth bearing in mind. Now, Tendar says an apartment building is blown up in Belgrade. Over the course of the war, I've seen a lot of residential buildings being hit, and I'm pretty certain this one is completely different. The explosion pattern indicates an explosion from inside the building. I don't see any missiles coming down, and the smoke and debris is going sideways. So I completely agree with that. I looped the video to emphasize it. This has all the hallmarks of what happened in 1999 in Moscow when the high-rise buildings were blown up by the FSB to justify the war in Chechnya. So that's what I talked about earlier. But then there's a couple of interesting points to add on to this. So an addendum for him. I cannot rule out a gas explosion. The Russian infrastructure is crumbling left and right. It's therefore sometimes hard to determine in Russia what is a terrorist attack by the FSB, Islamists, etc., or a negligence, or some form of negligence or an accident. My primary point is the explosion pattern coming from the inside. Now, this last point is something I hadn't considered. So for those saying that the building might be hit from the back and therefore no missile is on the footage, this is also a potential scenario. Coordinates of the building are there. In that case, the missile must have come from the northeastern direction. So in other words, it's not going to be a Ukrainian missile that's done that. Munition of the type of Fab 250, Fab 500 launched from the Russian plane has enough explosive yield to cause such destruction. Again, what can be ruled out is a missile coming from the south or southwest, in other words, from Ukraine. So you've got, okay, the least nefarious, if you like, theory is that it was a gas explosion from a maintenance issue within the building. Then you've got, which is possible. Is it probable that size of explosion? I don't know that you get that big an explosion. That looks bigger than a gas explosion. Then, but I'm no expert. Then it could be Ukrainians doing that with some kind of missile, bomb, rocket. But the explosive scenario there, I think you can rule that out. I think it is not likely to be a Ukrainian explosion either from the front, or rocket or missile either from the front because the explosion is coming out of the building, or from the back because it would have to go around the back, do a dogleg, which you can program missiles do, like cruise missiles and whatnot can do that, but it's highly unlikely that's going to be the case. They're not going to be using cruise missiles on a building like that, etc., etc. And so I think we can rule out that it was the Ukrainians doing that. So then you've got two options for the Russians doing. One, an FSB job, and there were claims, as I reported earlier, that the FSB were inside the building, previously checking it. I can't talk to the accuracy of that whatsoever, just some random on Telegram. So either it's a false flag operation where they've blown up the building on purpose, or it is a Russian rocket or bomb hitting the building from behind. That would be in the right direction if they were lobbing something into Kharkiv. And we have seen this, like something like 4 times in the last week or so, where they have dropped bombs on their own territory. It could well be that. So I still think those last two, I think the Russians, what did it, whether it's a false flag or a Russian accidental strike, is up for grabs, but I think they are the most likely explanations. Right, let's go to Andrew Perpetua's loss stats. And you can see there's about parity there, which is worrying for the Ukrainians, not something you'd want there. Interesting, though, that a lot of these vehicles are just unknown vehicles. Just don't know what they are because they're so thoroughly destroyed. ATGMs, maybe a tank, maybe destroyed. Could be destroyed, could be destroyed. Who knows what they were, but something's been destroyed. That was Ukrainian, so it's coming from a Russian bit of footage. So, yeah, quite a few unknowns there. Right, we have those two Mi-24s from the forward operating base that were destroyed. He's got it as a Russian Iskander strike. Then you got an air defense, a Strela 10 air defense taken out. Got a couple of Starlinks, a few boats damaged, BM-21 destroyed, so that's a Grad at multiple launch rocket system. And then the Bogdana taken out by Lancet, and another BM-21 Grad multiple launch rocket system damaged by Lancet. Lancets down here are doing quite a lot of damage at the moment. A few howitzers, an abandoned M1 Abrams that fell in a pole, then hit by a Krasnopol. That's a laser guided artillery munition. We got YPR 765 and M113, so those are basically the same sort of vehicle, older armor personnel carrier, and then nothing of too much value after that. But I think that's a bad day for the Ukrainians, right? Especially including those two Mi-24s. Really, really troubling there to lose those. And then we'll look at what the Russians have lost. So they've lost a Buk M2 air defense systems. That's fairly valuable. A couple of surveillance and comms, Miron M, Brem 1 recovery vehicle, and an engineering vehicle, as well as a TOS-1 thermobaric launcher and a BM-21 Grad of their own, multiple launch rocket systems. So fairly high value there. A number of tanks, T-80s and T-72s, different variants, taken out quite a few tanks there. A number of infantry fighting vehicles, APCs, and then a load of Desert Cross 1003s, loafs and motorcycles and whatnot. So some fairly valuable stuff there. Quite a few tanks thrown in. That's going to add up. But when the Ukrainians are losing 2 helicopters and a short-range air defense system, that's going to be troubling. And all of these unknowns there, who knows? I mean, there might be good tanks or they might be SUVs. Just not sure. So not a great day for the Ukrainians with regard to losses there. Anyway, I thought that I'd add that in as addendum. Sorry, I missed out on that one for my last video. Take care. Speak to you very soon.